Everybody. Welcome to the Banana Republican. I'm James Gorey. Hey, what's going on with China? What does it look like with the whole Venezuelan thing going on and a potential Iran strike? Okay, there's a bigger kind of historical context which we want to get into. Um, First, let's set the table. Trump takes out Venezuelan dictator Maduro. China is buying like 80, 90% of Maduro's oil. I don't know. It's huge. It's a large amount. Different numbers from different sources, but they're a major purchaser of Venezuelan oil. Okay, that's going away. It wasn't just about people, drugs, trafficking. It's or the oil for that matter. We don't need the oil. The U.S. doesn't need the oil, but it's about deprivation. It's about depriving China access to the oil. Just so it's the way the Panama operation with the U.S. So it's saying, look, we're going to deprive China of this exclusivity and control over the Panama Canal. That's ongoing, and not making the pages, but the U.S. is still working on that. So, and as a result, China is trying to do this trans coast to coast railway or whatever because they know that the U.S. is serious. So, what's happening? Trump takes out China, takes China out of Panama, pretty much. That's going on. Gets the Argentinians to revoke the approval for China, the allowance of China to use Patagonia for their secret space base. So that's going away. And now Trump takes out Venezuelan strongman Maduro. The U.S. has control of the oil. We don't want the oil going to China. We don't want China having an excuse to be in the Americas. So this is a new neo-Monroe doctrinism, yeah, on a Trumpian scale, which is interesting to say the least. All right, so what does that mean? Well, in terms of China and U.S. relationships, it could mean quite a lot. Now, there's a historical perspective, which I mentioned in an earlier podcast, the preceding one actually, and we'll get into that real quickly here. So think about it from a historical standpoint. Before China was a player in the world, China was divided up by different countries and occupied. And so if we go back to like the mid 1930s, or even before that, let's go back to 1870. 1870, in Japan, there was something called the Meiji Restoration. Now, the Meiji Restoration was a government level decision to send out Japanese envoys, Japanese students, young people, scientists, everyone they could get to go to the West to learn the ways of the West. It's kind of like The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise, kind of sort of the same thing. The idea, Japan figured it out real quickly. Same year, Admiral Perry, I believe, floated the U.S. Navy into Tokyo Harbor and said, "We're here. Hello. You're no longer an isolationist. We're going to do some business with you." So Japan saw the cannons, the ships, the tall men, the rifles, and said, "Yeah, this whole samurai gig, yeah, not going to happen. The old ways are done." Okay, China didn't figure it out 30 years later with shadow boxing, but Japan figured it out really, really quick. So for the next 35, 40 years, they sent their people to the West to learn how to build factories, to learn how to do metallurgy or engineering and munitions, obviously, right? And all of that stuff. Well, by 1905, the Japanese Navy was sufficiently powerful to defeat the Russian Navy in the Russo-Japanese War of 1905. Right? They beat the Russian Navy. So the first time an Asian nation had defeated a Western nation in battle as a European nation. That was a very big deal, culturally, racially, politically, all that stuff. And so the Meiji Restoration was, hey, we've got to. This is a new game. We better figure it out, or we're going to be the football. Everyone's going to be punting around, right? And they can see what's going on with China. China was not doing well. So the Japanese were smart, and they were had ingenuity and innovation. They sucked that stuff up and took it up, and within 30 years, 35 years, they had beaten a Western European, Eastern European nation. Okay, in naval battle, big deal. Okay, then another 30 years goes by. What happens? The Japanese go militaristic. go adventuring, and they create the greater co-prosperity sphere in, in, in Asia. And basically, they kind of conquer the Korea, the Philippines, Indonesia, Micronesia, everywhere down to basically Australia. If that was next, like Guam or um, just all over the place, right? And um so that's and to run that, they needed oil. Well, Japan doesn't have oil, but there's all kinds of uh, Netherlands and Dutch and British petroleum out in Indonesia, Micronesia, those areas in the Pacific. And so they took them over. And so, well, the U.S. at some point said, no, we're not going to let you do that. We're going to stop you getting oil. We're going to boycott you here. And you're not going to sell oil to Japan. And that was June, was it June of 41? Anyhow, you get the idea. An empire needs energy to run on. And Japan needed the oil badly. Hence, the attack on Pearl Harbor in December of 1941 got the U.S. in the war. Huge mistake by Japan. And a lot of the generals knew it. So when are we invading San Diego? They would ask. When are we bombing San Diego and L.A.? They couldn't. They could hit the U.S., they could hit Hawaii, but that's as far as they could go. All right? So now fast forward. You got China, 1979. First of all, they had a communist revolution in 49. They starved for 30 years. Everybody knew it. The Chinese sucked. When communism is over you, everybody sucks. And the party was doing well financially. I mean, they had wealth and riches, but nobody else did. There were famines. There was man-made starvation. There was dams breaking, killing hundreds of thousands of people. Famine after famine. Great Leap Forward, which is a great failure, led to famine. Again, man-made political famine, taking farmers out of the land and taking city dwellers and engineers, making them farmers, making people make pot metal, like Mao's thing to I don't know, compete with the iron ore production, the iron production of Britain and the U.S. Just harebrained shit that just didn't belong, right? And just destroyed China. So that was from 49 to 79. In 79, then the Japanese says, we're going to, again, another famine. We're going to be next. They're going to eat us next. So, a lot of people look at Nixon, the triangulation period, are talking about the opening of China in 76 and playing the China card against Russia. The Chinese were playing the American card, okay, against the people of China. All right, so what happens? They do kind of like the Meiji Restoration. They, rather than sending people out, just sending people out, which they did, they invited everybody in. Why? Because they had a huge market, obviously. So, like Japan, they said, okay, what we're doing ain't working. We're going to get devoured by our people, and we're going to be divided, and it's going to be chaos, and we've got the Brits over in Hong Kong, et cetera, et cetera. We're not competing with anybody, and the Russians are breathing down our neck. So, and they're failing too, by the way. So that's what they did. They invited the West in, augmented, supplemented, really driven by billions and billions of Western dollars, tremendous amounts of Western ingenuity, know-how, building plants, and of course, dirt cheap Chinese labor by the hundreds of millions. So that's what happened. All right. So then what happens? Well, people in China start in around 1989. We want democracy. We don't need to be crushed by this Communist Party, having you guys suck up all the best companies we create and then enriching yourselves and then punishing us. So all these young students got together and said, we don't need this. Our parents are doing well. We don't need this at all. And besides, look at Taiwan. Taiwan's doing great. And even when they're not doing super great, they're doing better than we are per capita by a long shot. And they don't need a party telling them how to do things. In fact, in that moment of Tiananmen Square, in that week or two, or whatever it was, business went on. There was no party telling people what to do. Business went on. The Chinese know what to do with business. You don't have to tell Chinese entrepreneurs what it takes. They know what it takes. So obviously, this was 1989. Tiananmen Square was crushed, and the deal was, the party made with the people was, you get rich, you shut up about politics. We'll keep the we'll run the economy, we'll make people wealthy, and lift the country out of poverty. Shut up about politics, and that was the deal. And for a while, it worked because of the West. Western money kept flowing in. Western factories, even though China would take the factories by themselves, they'd steal them from the Western partners. They still took them. They built know-how, innovation, cheap labor. So fast forward, meanwhile, China starts getting military know-how, kind of like 1930s Japan. They now have an infrastructure that's built by the U.S. and the Europeans and probably Japan and some Korea. And now they have people, and they have Western technology, Western military technology, Western communications, Cisco systems, for example, routers and all that kind of stuff. Doesn't matter, all the whole 9 yards. So China now sees itself as a competitor for the U.S. in lots of ways. It sucks out 2 or 3 million jobs off the way, similarly what China did in the 80s to the U.S. Sucked out a couple million jobs. Same phenomena. Again, the same parallel. I forgot to mention that one. So now we've got China. Now fast forward, they're expanding. Their navy is greater than the U.S. The U.S. can't go toe to toe to them in the Pacific, and they've got anti-U.S. anti-naval rockets that are hypersonic and missiles and so forth. So they're a formidable force, specifically in the Pacific region, ship for ship, tonnage for tonnage, and offensive weapons and so forth. So there's a big parallel there between Japan and the Russian Navy. We're seeing the Chinese Navy challenging the U.S. Navy. You see this parallel? And now what's China been doing? They've been going abroad. Oh, to match Japan's greater co-prosperity sphere, China has the Belt and Road Initiative. Basically the same thing, sucking the wealth out of these other countries by making deals with these potentate leaders, quote unquote. Yeah, sell us the harbor. We'll build you a harbor. We'll build you some railroads. We'll build you some roads, airports, whatever it is. Here's the debt. Oh, you can't service the debt? Then we'll take ownership of that. Thank you very much. And that's what's going on. So Japan had that greater prosperity fear in the Pacific. China has the Belt and Road Initiative all around the world. Same concept. What does an empire run on? What does AI run on? What do navies and factories run on? Oil. And the U.S., by hitting Venezuela, is basically shortchanging or blocking a rising Asian power, not Japan, but China this time, a rising Asian power from accessing energy. And a hit on Iran will bookend that. So you got Venezuela, who has the most oil in the world. We don't need it, but we sure as hell don't want the Chinese to get it. And you got Iran, for which China is buying probably 60, 70, 80, maybe 90% of their oil, depending on the year. And now we're starving China from oil. That's a big deal. That's a very big deal. The only caveat there is, what will China do if and when the U.S. decapitates the Iranian leadership, sets up a Western-friendly government, and the Iranian people want nothing to do with China, and they start selling their oil elsewhere or at much higher prices and much smaller volumes. The idea Trump is doing is he wants to choke China, prevent them from being this superpower on energy, getting from all these different sources. Venezuela in the West, Iran in the East, or the Middle East, really. But you get the idea. Now, the last historical corollary there is, well, we know what Japan did, Pearl Harbor. What's China going to do? Something to think about. What's China going to do If the U.S. is successful in strangling their oil supply, their energy supply, how are they going to power their AI factories, their AI computers? How are they going to power their industry? I mean, they're building coal plants like it's going out of style, like it's their life depending on it. That's what China's doing. Yeah, they lead green energy. I'm just a little sidebar here. China is the leader in green energy, but they're building coal-fired plants at record pace, like one a month. Maybe was it one a month or one a day or one a week? Ridiculous amounts of electricity and power being generated. That tells you what's going on. And now we can't stop them from building coal plants, but we can sure as hell disrupt their energy supply from abroad. And that's the play. That's the play. Kick them out of the Western Hemisphere, kick them out of Venezuela, cut off their Middle East oil supply from Iran. Now they're in a bind. Now they got to think of something else to do, some other way to get that energy. They may or may not do that. They may go Japan 1941 on us. Something to think about, right? Who knows? We'll see. All right. Hey, if you like this kind of content, please like, share, and subscribe to the Banana Republican. We try to bring savvy, intelligent analysis to the world affairs, and I hope you've enjoyed it. We'll see you next time. Thanks.